So, nearby Nisha, if you were going to be an actor, what name would you like to go by?
I think my name's pretty unusual and interesting on its own.
Yeah,
It does
same
get
here.
spelt wrong a lot.
What are you talking about? A lesser-known fact about becoming an actor is that you can't have a name that is the same as somebody else in the industry, regardless of whether they work in front of or behind the camera. What's more, even if you do happen to have a quite unique name not shared by anybody else in the industry, most of the time, your agent will advise you to change it. Which usually works out, but sometimes results in actors having to deal with an unusual amount of bullshit, as happened with Michael Caine, which forced him to change his name to Michael Caine.
These titles always confuse me when you name them like that. It's like, what the fuck are you on about?
But it'll make sense when we get to the meat of today's video. But before that, I should mention that today's video is sponsored by a guy who wrote a book. I'm going to get his name right here, because getting people's names right is very specific here.
Yeah, it's good to get people's names right, isn't it, Carl?
I'm really sorry. So
there'll be a fact about explaining that if you've not seen the video.
Which is oddly enough about another sponsor. It's a guy called Tommy Williams who wrote a book called Honest Bonds, which we'll get to at the end of this video, which he picked. He picked the topic. He said he read the title and he pissed himself, thinking what the hell it could be about. So let's get right into that.
Same as me then.
First things first, did you know that actors can't have the same name as each other?
I didn't realise that, but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, so the general rule is if you want to join one of the many acting unions to exist, the two biggest ones for our audience will be Equity over in the UK and the Screen Actors Guild in the United States, but there are many other unions that represent actors, filmmakers, directors, people in front of and behind the camera. If you want to join any of them, one of the rules is you can't have the same name as another member. And this very often ends up biting a lot of young actors in the arse when they try to join because they don't realise how many members of these unions exist. And there might be someone from the 1950s who had a producing credit on a TV show back then who still has membership that has the same name as you. And as a result, when you join these unions, they generally require that you submit a handful of other names you wouldn't mind going by. And that might sound a little excessive or even extreme to the people at home, but think about it this way, it's like you wouldn't want your work being confused for the work of somebody else.
Yeah, makes sense.
And they just operate on this first come, first served basis. And it's actually so common that more actors than not act under a name that is different from their own. In a lot of cases, it's a slight variation of it. A lot of actors will use their middle name, for example, or a simplified version of their last name to make it more readable. One of the things that's quite noticeable when you start reading about the original names of actors and actresses before they enter the world of acting is that they change them to appear less snooty.
Oh, really?
A notable exception to this being the actor David Hyde Pierce, who originally did not want to act under the name David Hyde Pierce because it sounds very, very snooty, very upper class.
Yep.
However, he was advised during his tenure on the show Frasier that his name helped sell his character of Niles as being this upper class snob.
There. I'm here for you. And you're over there for me.
And he's talked at length about how that was both a blessing and a curse. It was great for the role of Frasier, but it was difficult to get out from under that after the show ended.
I always feel like as well, when you've got celebs with full names like that, I feel like it's weird to say just their first name.
Yes.
We was talking previously about Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
It feels weird calling him Sam or Samuel. You've got to say his whole name.
Yeah.
It just sounds weird just saying the first name.
It's Sam Jackson or it's Samuel L. Jackson. It's weird that you always pronounce the L when you say. You can't say Samuel Jackson. It's Samuel L. Jackson.
You just can't call him Sam.
And that is the dream for a lot of actors, to have their name be that clear in your head when you say it.
Yeah.
You always say it out loud and in full.
It's like Dwayne Johnson as well. You can say that, or The Rock.
Yeah.
Dwayne. Don't just call him Dwayne though, do you?
Yeah, you don't just call him Johnson. It's because his last name is pretty generic.
Yeah.
But when it's Dwayne Johnson, that's fucking rad. Or Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yes.
And it's always been not a dream, but a goal of mine is to try and get every DVD of a film starring The Rock. So if I can try and pinpoint the exact moment he started going by Dwayne Johnson, because I know there's a middle period by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and I want to see what film it is where he could start billing himself as Dwayne Johnson. Because when he was in all those early the Scorpion King movies, it was The Rock. Then it was Dwayne The Rock Johnson in he was doing the Tooth Fairy and stuff. And now it's Dwayne Johnson. But would you like to hear a couple of the more eclectic names that celebrities originally had before changing something that sounded more altogether down to earth?
Definitely.
We have, probably my favourite one is Vin Diesel. you want to guess what his name was before he became Vin Diesel? You're not going to guess it.
I don't
It was
something.
Mark Sinclair.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mark Sinclair.
And that's the thing, he doesn't sound nearly as manly as Vin Diesel. And he changed his name to become a bouncer. And you can understand why he changed it to Vin Diesel, can't you? Then we have Tina Fey. Tina Fey, so pretty down-to-earth name, is it? You know, it's Tina Fey. So Tina over there. You know, when you think Tina Fey, you think, you know, like goofy girl with glasses.
Yeah.
Like, quite literally, if you watch Bob's Burgers. But her original birth name was Elizabeth Stammer-Tina Fey. Brad Pitt, his original name, William Bradley Pitt. And then one of my favourites, Elton John, Reginald Kenneth Dwight. But on the other hand, though, there are a few actors in the industry who were advised to change their name and then didn't. One of the most famous being Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was told right at the start of his career, nobody is ever going to be able to pronounce that. And now there's not a person on earth who doesn't know his name.
Yeah, that's a pretty epic name on its
It's
own,
great,
to be fair,
yeah. Like, he was told they're never going to fit that on a poster. You fast forward 10 years, and his name being on a poster was the only selling point you needed.
Well, it's like on the Terminator poster, it's just his last name,
In massive letters. Like, that's the thing, it was a sign of quality for many years. And he actually acted in a film under an alternate name once, and it was in the film Hercules of New York, where they dubbed over all of his dialogue and they billed him as Arnold Strong.
Oh, no!
And that's the film where he fights a bear.
I know like a lot of people struggle with my name
Yep.
as well because of how it's spelled. Because it's spelled Nisha. People pronounce it as Nisha because it's the I sound,
Yep.
but it's pronounced Nisha. And people spell it, when I say it out loud, people spell it
Two
like
E's,
two
yeah.
E's because that's how it sounds. The same with my last name.
Yeah, and I have the alternate problem with my name, where like I've talked before, like my first name Karl, K-A-R-L, often gets misspelled with a C or misheard as Kyle,
Yeah.
which I don't get because Karl and Kyle sound very different to me, but I can understand that. You know, it might not always be the case. Some people I speak quite quickly. Then my last name is spelled exactly the way it sounds, but people are often thrown off by that because it's just two words stuck together, Smallwood.
Yeah.
And how do you spell that, Mr. Smallwood? Oh, just the way it sounds. Small then wood. Oh, okay then.
Yeah,
But
it's tricky.
It is, and let's bring it back to Michael Caine, and this is probably one of my favourite actors' real names, because Michael Caine just sounds like a proper bloke, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And he is a proper Cockney. Like, that's his native accent. He's very proud of his Cockney origins, and he largely refuses to speak in anything other than his native Cockney accent for most of his film roles, unless it specifically requires him to do so. And his birth name was Maurice Micklewhite.
Are you for real?
That was his original birth name. Maurice Micklewhite, which in the joke I put here is that it sounds like you ran Ebenezer Scrooge through Google Translate and just picked English 5 times. He originally did not want to go by Michael Caine or Maurice Micklewhite. He originally wanted to go by Michael Scott. Not because of The Office, but because of a Humphrey Bogart movie he saw the poster for when he was talking to his agent on the telephone. Like, his agent was telling him, like, you probably don't want to go by that name. Pick a easier to spell one and one that's, like, you know, more direct and easy to remember. So he was like, oh, how about Michael Scott? I went, oh, there's already a guy called that. Oh, fuck. How about Michael Caine? That'll do. I love as well with Michael Caine that he's aware that his name sounds like someone saying Michael Caine.
Oh, no.
You know that old joke of, like, how do you say Michael Caine? You just say Michael Caine, and it sounds like you say Michael Caine in his accent of, like, Michael Caine.
God.
Michael Caine. And he talks, there's this great anecdote told by him of, like, he was at a party once and he was getting a cold shoulder from the hostess. And he went over and tried to talk to her, like, is everything okay? He's like, are you a drug dealer? What?
Oh, no.
Well, everyone's coming up to you and talking about my cocaine. He's like, no, my name, Michael Caine. And you're like, oh, okay. They thought he was a drug dealer.
Oh, my God. Oh, no.
And I think as your reaction shows, like, Michael Caine is pretty synonymous with the name Michael Caine. Like, you do not think of him as Maurice Micklewhite, you think of him as Michael Caine. But for many years, he still had a passport and official documentation that said Maurice Micklewhite on it. The problem is that he'd turn up to airports or, like, you know, any other thing where he needs to, like, provide official documentation. He'd see the guy, like, oh, Mr. Caine, and he'd hand them a passport with someone else's name on it.
Oh, God, that's awkward.
Yeah. And according to Michael Caine, he said, I just got so sick of that happening, of I'd, like, you know, shake the guy's hand, I pose for a photo, and say, oh, Mr. Caine. And then they look at my passport and go, what the fuck is this? And he said he got so sick of it that he just went to the government and changed his name to Michael Caine by default.
Oh god.
So that is how Michael Caine changed his name to Michael Caine.
Oh, it all makes sense now.
And there's a twist in this story that's kind of unbelievable, and it is that Michael Caine directly blames ISIS for having to change his name. He says that prior to, 9/11 and the threat from ISIS, when this happened in airports, it'd be a joke. It'd be something they could laugh about. But after that, when the TSA and people checking passports got a lot more stringent, someone turning up with a passport with what appears to be a false name, that was a cause for alarm and resulted in, rather than it being a 5-minute awkward conversation, it turned into hours-long interviews where they'd be asking why are you traveling under someone else's name? So no, this is my name. Well, you're Michael Caine. No, I'm an actor.
What a stage name.
Yeah. And seemingly not enough people knew that, and Michael Caine's like, fuck it, I'm Michael Caine now.
Yeah, I had no idea. Especially not Maurice.
And he said he just got,
name.
yeah, and he just says he got so sick of arguing about it, he just changed his own name. And I can only imagine the unique sense of frustration that must arise from having people tell you that you're wrong about your own name. You go, Michael Caine. You keep being a legend. I still think as well, Michael Caine's got some of my favourite quotes. He's got one about the film Jaws 4, which he was in and never watched. And Jaws 4 is awful. And someone asked Michael Caine about it once. They're like, have you ever seen Jaws 4? He's like, well, of course not, no. By all accounts, it's terrible. But I have seen the house that it built, and by all accounts, that's excellent. Which I love. And then there's the other one, because I've got a subscription to Empire magazine, where they interviewed him in it. And they were asking him, do you think you're going to be in any films anytime soon? He's like, good heavens, no, I'm 90.
Good.
It's like, why would I'm 90? It's like, he just says to the interviewer, this might even be my last interview, I'm so tired.
I didn't realise he was that age.
90 years old, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of actors that I looked up recently, just out of curiosity to see how old they are. They're a lot older than I thought. I think Bruce Willis, one of them, he's
70.
70.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, 70. Something like Sylvester Stallone, about 70.
Just, yeah.
I dread the day that I wake up and Arnold Schwarzenegger's dead. Because I'm going to... it's one of those things, I think it's that death's going to hit me the hardest to know that the Terminator's dead. Anyway, let's move on to today's sponsor.
Yes.
So as mentioned, today's sponsor is a guy called Tommy Williams. And we've been in Communicado for quite a while now. When he reached out several months ago about a book he'd written called Honest Bonds. And he just sent me a bunch of the key art from the book, of the characters in it. And some of it is admittedly quite sick. And I'm just going to show you one of the cool pictures here. This is just just solid character design. Because I've always I talked at length many times about the idea of character design, and it is you keep it simple, stupid, kiss, and just like that character design he sent me through, just like hell, goddamn yeah, solid ass character design. And one of the things that I asked Mr. Williams to do is just send me a little bit about himself so we could talk about it in the video today.
Okay.
And what he said to me, this is great. He says, I wrote the book years ago, and then I put it up on Amazon, where you can buy it now, and I realised it was shit. So I took it down and I rewrote it. And I respect that honesty of being. I did it. It was up. It was for sale. I didn't like it. I took it down. I redid it.
Fair enough.
And that's what I respect that level of integrity and honesty to be like, look, I took a long hard look at it and I wasn't happy with the result, so I changed it and made it better. As someone who writes for a living, I exclusively write like fact-based stuff because I can't write anything that requires creating anything approaching a universe. I can craft a joke that might involve a funny little scenario that lasts about 5 minutes. I could never write a novel, which is what Tommy Williams did, and it is. I'm hoping that's the name he writes under as well, because I'm just going by the name that's in the emails.
Yeah, he might have a stage name.
Maybe it is. Maybe they're an author's pseudonym. And I'm gonna mess this up because it's a fantasy novel. And the problem is with a fantasy novel is you've got words that exist within the fantasy realm that's created by the author.
Yeah, so you don't know how they're pronounced.
No, I know how they're written. I can see how they're spelled. So I'm really sorry if I butcher these, but I want to give it a go. So I'd like to explain the plot synopsis. Is it synopsis or synopsis?
I say synopsis.
I'm going to say synopsis because it sounds cooler. Honest Bonds is a fantasy novel about a hitman. Sorted. I'm already that means there's going to be a murder in this book. And that's sick. Called Riula Trimpton. I'm hoping I'm getting that right. Because that's it's a name. That's a good, you know what, if you act under that name, you'd be all right.
That's a cool name.
You'd be all right to act under that name. No one's going to have that name. Unless, they turn this into a film one day. And in which case, if they do, you turn it into a film, I want a cameo. Not a big one, you don't even have to pay me. Just feed me and drive me there and I'll turn up. who has to save his younger sister, Sapphire. Oh, that's a good name. That's the thing I would want, like, if I had the balls to rename myself, I'd go something cool like that.
Sapphire, yeah.
From a group of dark wizards. Fuck it. Wizards, hitmen.
Wizards and hitmen.
Oh, man. Can you imagine trying to assassinate a fucking wizard? How hard's that going to be?
Well, I say, would you be able to?
I don't know. Like,
They got magic.
how many wizards can survive a shotgun blast to the back of the fucking head? You know what? Find out.
Was there a scene in Harry Potter?
In the book called the Neve took her as compensation when he killed one of them for a large sum of money. Of course, you can reword that so it flows better for you. Now, I'll read the words. You're the author. I am the guy who reads about facts online. And it's, I'd also preach the book. This is what I love about the sponsors that we do, where people are just like, yeah, you can mention this if you want. And one of the things they say you can mention if you want is that it's available for purchase. It's your sponsorship, mate. Of course you're going to mention it's for purchase. You can find the links below and all that good stuff. And we wholeheartedly support you in your creative endeavours. And I, for one, applaud someone who has the creative integrity. You know what? It was shit. I'm going to redo that. I'm going to do it better.
I'm quite interested to read it, to be fair.
Well, I believe that Tommy did offer to send a copy to the office, but it was going to be one of those things where it'd take a few weeks to get here. So we wouldn't have been able to have it, for display purposes in time for when they want the sponsorships to go live. But I'll ask them to do so if they're more than happy to. We'll even take a reduced cut of our fees, so that, for postage fees and stuff, and you can send it to you. And maybe we can do an update at some point after you've gotten through it.
Sounds good.
And maybe if there's a sequel, I can get murdered in it.
You can get murdered.
Yeah, Karl of the Smallwood. Just put me in and get me murdered.
I just put the Fat Fiend crew as characters.
No, we've all got to get murdered. Do you know when Edgar Wright and Nick Frost were in Land at Dead, when George Romero was like, I love Shaun at Dead. It's like, we want to be zombies. If I'm going to cameo in anything, I want to get murked straight away. Second one, shotgun to the back of the head, done. Oh, but no, thank you very much, Tommy, for sponsoring it. I know that, speaking to him personally for a moment, our back and forth has been several months in the making, because they were very excited, understandably, to share their creation with the world. Again, I applaud that, and I hope their passion is clear to our audience, who, if they are interested in anything they've heard, will check out the link below.